Wonderful. Hello. We have a full room. I'm so excited. Awesome. Cool. So, no, I promised myself I was going to start with ciao. I'm very honored to be here. Thank you so much for everyone inside, everyone outside as well. Cool. So, Python and freedom and bias. First of all, who am I? Thank you so much for your introduction. My name is Laís Carvalho. I'm a software developer at Workday. I'm also a board member of EuroPython Society, which is how many people know me here for, like just wandering around PyCons. I've also done a little bit of community work in the last 5 years, ever since 2019, when I started with Python Ireland. And this is a little bit of where I've been, so EuroPython. I'm also part of the PyLadies Dublin chapter, and this is the Humble Data symbol. If you're interested in getting shiny stickers of Humble Data, come and talk to me. Yes, shiny stickers. And this is a picture of me in Italy. No, actually, no, sorry. This is a picture of me in Italy. And a little bit of merchandising. EuroPython, please do get tickets, come and see us. We're preparing so much cool stuff for you. Please do. I'll give you a few seconds to, get your QR codes going. Wonderful, so Python time. Let's try. I tried this before. No, it didn't work. Let's try again. Woohoo, nice. So, everyone knew. Wow. The Zen of Python by Tim Peters. Beautiful is better than ugly. Explicit is better than implicit. Simple is better than complex. Complex is better than complicated. Fast is better than nested. Sparse is better than dense. Readability counts. Special cases aren't special enough to break the rules, although practicality beats purity. Errors should never pass silently, unless explicitly silenced. In the face of ambiguity, refuse the temptation to guess. There should be one, and preferably only one, obvious way to do it, although that way may not be obvious at first, unless you're Dutch. Now is better than never, although never is often better than right now. If the implementation is hard to explain, it's a bad idea. If the implementation is easy to explain, it may be a good idea. Namespaces are one honking idea. Let's do more of those. You can't see here, but I promise you that is what it says. Who here is familiar with the Zen of Python? Good, good. And who here feels like after reading this, or by knowing it before, feels like they actually understand it? They get the meaning of it. Awesome. You came to the right place. Wonderful. So, yes. Cool. So, first time I read it, I wasn't fully sure I got it. I looked at the words, but I couldn't really feel like I got the meaning. To me, they kind of looked like Python commandments, some sort of aphorisms. I pondered to remember where else I had seen a reference to aphorisms before. That's it. I rented my bookshelf, and I got help from the Bible. Oh, sorry. For those of you who are not familiar, Gödel and Bach, An Eternal Golden Braid, is mandatory reading on the curriculum of some AI university courses. Written by Douglas Hofstadter, who is a almost mathematician, physicist, computer coder, humanist aficionado. This brilliant book explains fundamental concepts of mathematics, symmetry, intelligence, with some discussions like, what does it mean to communicate? How knowledge can be represented, how can it be stored, and even the fundamental notion of meaning itself, which is a little bit more where we're going to dive in today. This book talks about the word being a single thing played on different keys. The keys being music, art, mathematics, computing, biology. All this in the good spirit of Lewis Carroll, the Alice in Wonderland guy. Can you hear me properly? Because I feel like I'm... Okay, cool. So in my personal search for meaning, I opened the book, on chapter 4, and named The Location of Meaning. In this chapter, Hofstadter mentions the 3 possible layers contained in any message. So let's unpack this a little bit. First of all, let's define what is a message. For Hofstadter, a message can be any media used to transmit a thought. Anything such as a piece of music, a paper with a written note, or a drawing on the wall. Those are all messages. Now, if we take music as an example, we can dive in and try and analyze the 3 layers of messages by using music. So, first of all, we have the frame message, which is the package. Taking music, the frame can be a record player, or a CD, or, since it's not 1950 anymore, Spotify. The outer message is characterized by the recognition of the message itself. This is where language and sound comes in. In the outer layer is where we build mechanisms to correctly decode the meaning of a message. Again, example of music. The outer message is the music itself, lyrics and melody, all together. It's on this layer that we perceive language. Who here has studied music? Wonderful. So for those of you who have not, can you understand what's written in there? Okay. So this is the understanding, this is where the idea of the outer message, the language of the outer message coming in, because you can look at it, you know it's about music, but you cannot understand what it says, what it means. Then we go into inner message, which is analogous to the emotional experience within the message itself. So in music, this can be perceived as the different feelings that you have when you listen to something. So think about a soundtrack of a movie, for example, how a different song, a different soundtrack in a movie scene can make you feel. The different ways that soundtrack can make you feel. Think about how you feel when you read poetry, for example, or look at artwork. I see a very bad face over there. Someone here doesn't appreciate poetry. Anyhow, so the inner message is based on the perception of how that message makes you feel. This is where intention resides. So, as Hofstadter puts it, to understand the inner message is to have extracted the meaning intended by the sender. Think about this as a sort of interpretation of intention rather than analysis of content. And for those of you who were here at the opening keynote this morning, the early birds, here's a more granular definition of meaning by Jody. According to Jody, the meaning of a word maps to some sort of cognitive representation we have of the thing that it describes. It also implies that the meaning of the word is grounded in our environment. In fact, in the environment we share with others that use the same language as us. So again, language and context. A word doesn't exist nothing really exists in an isolated environment. Everything has context involved with it. Cool, so now that we've established a little bit of the ground of where we're going, gathered all this information, let's go back to our Pythonic commandments with eyes of seeing and extract a little bit of the intentions that Tim Peters had when he wrote it. We'll not have time to go through all of them again, so I will select my favorite ones, and we have a little bit of a discussion about it. Cool. Beautiful is better than ugly. I think we can all agree about this one. So still a valid reminder, but let's keep going. Explicit is better than implicit. Now, for me, this relates to clarity. Think about how much easier it is to deal with things when it's all openly shown, loud and clear. The more explicit, the lower the cognitive load required to understand something, both in code and in life. So if we take a little bit of a pause to analyze context, this might not be applicable everywhere as totally true. When I was on my flight here, I was thinking about places where this maximum is actually not applicable. Can you think about something? Can anyone here think about a place, a context where implicit is actually much better than explicit? Default parameters. Yeah, good example. Okay. Anyone else? Flirting. Nice, you got my example, man, amazing. That's what Vishal was saying yesterday at the bar. I was gonna use this one. Flirting with Irish people versus flirting with German people. Yes, indeed. When on my flight here, I was actually thinking about poetry, but flirting works too, as default parameters. Think about how, as in flirting, the beauty of the language would be completely missed if you're just explicit when you're trying to hook up with someone, as well as when you're writing or reading a poem. So just highlighting context is important. Cool. Simple is better than complex. Again, I think we agree on this one. But as good engineers, we naturally tend to complicate things. A good reminder of the KISS design pattern, requesting us to take a deep breath and remember to strive for simplicity. And for those of you who do not know what KISS, actually, let's try this. Maybe I don't have to do it. Do we all know what KISS stands for? Cool, because I kind of changed it a bit. We have a code of conduct, people. Readability counts. Readability relates to clarity and easiness to understand. We read our code more often than we write it. The easier it is to read, the better life will be. Also, having in mind we write code for other people first, and then for machines, the reader should spend as much energy to understand one's code. For that, the writer should try and make everyone's life easier, including their own. Several aspects can make your code more readable, like adequate name variable, structure, conciseness, linting, modularity. The aim is to have code, comments, and content which is relatively easy to understand and review and refactor in order to avoid confusion. Speaking about comments, it reminds me to say thank you to someone who has dedicated their career to teaching and preaching about documentation. SpongeBob is a big fan. We have a keynoter here today. He's not in the room because I forgot to invite him. There was no space as well anyway, Readability can be significantly improved by well-written and properly structured documentation. And in the Python community, it's impossible to speak about good documentation without mentioning our documentation guru, Daniele Procida, the author of the diataxis framework. So I know he's not here, but thank you, Daniele, for your dedication and hard work supporting the Python community, both here and in Africa. Thank you for your talks and for improving readability on documentation around the globe with the diataxis framework. Thank you for inspiring each one of us who are part of this community. Now, back to Zen of Python. In the face of ambiguity, refuse the temptation to guess. Well, if you've been following the 11 other Python commandments that we mentioned so far, there should be very little ambiguity to deal with by now. But if you do face obscure situations, the act of guessing can bring you to an undesirable place. Code is communication, asking, listening, questioning. These are all parts of development and should be treated as critically important as tooling and frameworks. Think about how much effort is spent solving the wrong problem. But again, we're free to choose, and maybe this freedom of choice concept sounds familiar. There is this quote of Guido van Rossum, our beloved snake language creator, that says that Python is an experiment of how much freedom programmers need. Too much freedom, and nobody can read each other's code. Too little freedom, and expressiveness is endangered. And to continue with the biblical analogies, his is a pictorial representation of me and showcasing free will. No, this one didn't land well. Okay. Maybe it did. Moving on. Now is better than never, although never is often better than right now. The year was 2021, and only 2 weeks before the delivery of my final graduation thesis, I was diagnosed with cancer. A 9.5 centimeters tumor in my chest, another one on my neck. No wonder breathing was so hard. I submitted the thesis from the hospital and the queue in the waiting room for my first chemotherapy session. Never would have been much better than right now. Unfortunately, I had no say on this one, and right now was the best I could hope for. November 2021, chemotherapy ends. A graduation party to celebrate my first class honors degree. For those of you who are not European, this is really good. Thank you. And the end of chemo. 6 months of pain, self-inflicted belly injections, loneliness, and books. That's where I met Viktor Frankl. Freedom. I need a water break now, sorry. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist, a Holocaust survivor. I know, we're going very light now, aren't we? He was known for his philosophy of adding meaning to your suffering. And these are some of the books that he wrote. He was quite well known. And one of his sentences was one of the sentences that I actually quite like from him, says that the only thing you cannot take away from me is the way I choose to respond to what you do to me. The last of one's freedom is to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance. The choice of attitude part kind of stayed with me. I think that his intention was to say that I could choose to take responsibility for how I acted in any situation, cancer or Holocaust. All of a sudden, I understood that I wasn't to be blamed for the anger about being 20 years of age in a chemotherapy room, but the responsibility of keeping my best self, being gentle, kind, and courageous, that was all mine. And it was nothing but a choice. The willingness to accept the responsibility of my freedom is inherently mine. Ever since creation, apples and snakes and free will, all considered. Bias. Bias is built from our human flawed perception. Newsflash. But as Berkeley says, we have no other way to perceive the world other than through our senses. So we perceive things, and the moment we perceive them, we have that little bit of error rate that kind of just distorts how we look at them. Is anyone here familiar with this image? Good, this is good. Cool, so for those of you who are not, this is a picture by MC Escher, who was a lithographist. It's from 1953, and it's called Relativity. I'm gonna leave you with this for a second, just so you can look at it and understand and see. Note how many different perspectives we have in one image, simultaneous ones. To think that meaning is something dictated only by itself is human, but also severely flawed. As an example, let's think about a clap. The belief that this noise is inherent from my hands finding each other is not really a truthful one. Am I mad? Maybe. I mean, not in this sense. Because what happens, let's think about what happens if we change context. If I clap in a vacuum, what will happen? There will be no sound, because the sound is not inherent to the clap, but to the environment that brings the sound from my hands to my ears. So just another, highlighting that context is actually the most important thing. Now, dun, 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 let's do this experiment. For you who are at home, I'm sorry, but you'll not be able to participate right now. For those of you in the room, there are papers. Yes, indeed. I should have one, but I don't. Oh, thank you. Perfect. So you should have papers kind of like this. You're going to, if you do have one of these and you're not interested in participating, give it to someone who do want it. You do? You don't? Okay. You can also make one yourself, because as you see, it's not that much of, high technology. Yeah, someone already cracked the code. Cool. So what we're going to do with this is you're going to place it like this. So you're going to look at it. You're going to place it the same height of your eyes. You're going to cover your right eye. And with your left eye, you're going to be looking at the circle, the dot, the very big dot. And you're going to be moving this, so focusing on the circle. You're going to move this, and you're going to find a point where you cannot see the X with your peripheral vision anymore. So if you want to try, anyone wants to try? Awesome. Cool. Do we have any successes? Does anyone is able to not see? Yeah? Yeah? Awesome. Perfect. If you cannot, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to believe me. So basically, why does this happen? Does any... Yes, exactly. The blind spot in the eye, indeed. So basically, why does this happen? We have a bunch of, I know it's terrible, but I'm going to have to do this because I don't have a clicker. You have cones. We have cones everywhere here that receive light, receive the information from light entering the eye. When it gets right over here, the eye simply has no way. The cone doesn't exist on this specific part. Since the cones do not exist in this specific part, we have a blind spot. What happens? Light goes in. We can't perceive the information, so our brain automatically fills in the blank, which is with whatever is in the context. So if you did the experiment, you saw a blank spot. Wait. The takeaway here is that our blindness is organic and inherent to the imperfect nature of being human, as you can see, or not see. We just proved that humans are flawed by design, but personally, I like to think that there is beauty in these flaws. I like to choose the perspective that these defects are not really bugs, but beautiful features. The Pragmatic Programmer, another incredible book, talks about the utopic pursuit of the perfect code and how wasteful and unrealistic this is. Instead, we should aim for good enough code. In life, be good enough people. better than yesterday, we do just fine. There's a traditional Japanese aesthetic called wabi-sabi, which is a worldview centered on appreciating beauty that is imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete in nature. The showcase of this is the story of this Japanese artist who makes ceramics for their whole life. And they were able to produce hundreds of virtually perfect pieces, indistinguishable from each other. At the end of the molding process, they would carefully then press their thumb against each one of the ceramics when they're still malleable, just enough to insert their imprint on it. The addition of natural imperfection, that's wabi-sabi. I like to think that humans are just as that, flawed by design, full of defects, and beautiful because of it, and not in spite of it. Inspired by Lewis Carroll's 1895 paper, What the Tortoise Said to Achilles, also known as Carroll's Paradox of Inference, Hofstadter wrote, Contracrostipunctus, yes, I got this, that says, tortoise, I don't see why you call them defective. It is simply an inherent fact about humans that they can't do all you might wish them to be able to do. But if there is a defect anywhere, it's not in them, but in your expectations of what they should be able to do. And the crab was just full of such unrealistic expectations. Here, the crab is us. We're all crabs by nature, and we always have been, or at least since 1895. Since we are just as crab, full of expectations and flawed by design, how can we mitigate them? How can we mitigate those issues? Well, I have some strategies that might help. A tool to make more conscious choices is mindfulness, breaking the cycle of automatic reacting to impulses by cascading ingrained behavior from past experiences. By design, we subconsciously learn, we consciously react. What mindfulness does is to create space between the rising of the emotion and the reaction to it. As an example, I feel angry, I react by yelling at someone. Although there's no blame to be given by the anger, it is my responsibility to choose not to yell at someone. This is how we keep our own power on making conscious choices, just like Viktor Frankl, cancer, or Holocaust. Then, find a community, somewhere you feel safe at, and speak about hard human problems. Listen to understand. Give yourself space to understand the inner message being conveyed. Be empathetic, listen to understand, and relate to the intention of the message sender. And last, but not least, read. It changes perspective. And if you don't know what to read, ask me. I have plenty of suggestions. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you to Laís. We finished our time, so we have no space for questions, unfortunately. And thanks again for your talk and for you to attend.
Thank you. Yeah, come and talk to me later if you want, if you have any questions. Thank you.